has quickly become one of my favorite weapons in the entirety of the game. The weapon design, it's just lovely. It has this golden engraving in the middle of the blade, but it also has this shape of a very menacing greatsword. This is a curved greatsword, and it has many good things going on for it. It has tremendously high damage. It's amazing damage for a curved greatsword. It has decent poise damage. It's not that heavy because it's a greatsword, and if you buff the weapon, because it's a weapon that's imbuable, so you can imbue the weapon with different kind of little thingies, it is going to potentialize the damage of the weapon, and it is going to potentialize the Ash of War of the weapon, depending on the Ash of War that you're actually using. Some of them are not going to potentialize the damage with the creases that you use, some of them will. But that's the other cool thing about this weapon, is that it's a basic weapon with an interchangeable Ash of War, meaning that you can use any of the very meta Ashes of War that you have out there in the roster of the best Ashes of War, basic Ashes of War, that you can allocate into this weapon. It has a nice scaling and strength. That is why we're building this towards strength, and that being the case, since it is a single stat build, it is not a stat hungry build that allows you to use to do a whole bunch of stuff. So the build, like I said, is very straightforward. You have a strength 80 hard cap build right here. Now the thing with strength is that remember that when you're two-handing a weapon with a strength scaling weapon, you get 50% more strength, meaning that, for example, right here, if our strength is an 80, we actually do have 120 strength. Granted, the hard cap happens at 80, so you're not going to get that much damage in return beyond that point. One thing that I do have noticed is, for example, if you two-hand the weapon, it actually goes beyond the 99 hard cap just when you're two-handing a weapon, so it does give it a little bit more scaling, which is not going to be that amazing because you have already reached the hard cap, and there really is no point in going beyond 80. However, if you do want to two-hand the weapon, it's a little extra damage that you'll get out of it, but right here, if you want to be using it with the protection of a shield, that's something that can be done. You'll see that I have 15 faith, because like I said, this is not a stat hungry build, and we actually did manage to get those cheeky points in there. We don't need that much endurance, because while the weapon is heavy, with the usage of some talismans, we can have whatever that we want to have right here, potentialize the damage as much as humanly possible, without having to have that much endurance and mines. We're not going to be using that much mine, because the Ashes of War that we'll be using do not require that much mines, and we actually do manage to reach the hard cap of vigor at 60. So like I said, the weapon, Freyja's heavy greatsword, this has been imbued with a strength heavy scaling that yields us a total of A stat scaling for strength. That's why it is beneficial for us to reach the maximum hard cap right there at 80 strength to reach the maximum possible damage that we can do. And then as for the shield, you don't necessarily need to upgrade your shield. And the shield is up to your personal preference. We don't have like anything really fancy here. This is the best medium shield in my opinion. This is the one that gives you the most guard boost, although it's not that huge of a difference. You can by all means, for example, use Mesmesh Soldier Shield or the crest shields, the Wolf and Serpent crest shields, and the Banish Knight shields. It's just that out of the medium shields, I think that this one, the one that gives you the most guard boost, it has a little bit of a high strength requirements, but since we are a strength build, we can use this shield, and it actually has a nice combo with our weapon. As for the armor, remember that you're always going to be using whatever that it gives you 51 poise, and anything that allows you to maintain that 51 poise threshold, and that allows you to carry the shield and the weapon of your preference without fat rolling. I would consider that for this build, at the very least, a must is the Greatsword arsenal, because while it is not that huge of a heavy weapon, we don't have that much of endurance to be able to wield it, and we actually do want to be using a shield as well with this weapon. So I'd say that if you manage to squeeze that 51 poise threshold right there with the Earth's favorite +2, that's just fine. It's either off. Just be mindful about your poise that you have right there, that you always have the +51 poise, and that you're not fat rolling. As for the rest of everything, I'd say that a must is Shadow of Alexander as well, and the 200 Soul Talisman to increase our 200 attack, since we are a strength build. It is in our best interest to be two-handing, so that you have the best of both worlds. You have a very durable, very reliable shield, and you also have a very decent damage while two-handing. And then the final slot, that's going to be up to your personal preference. Like always, that's going to be where you're going to be placing the final talisman that you would want to be using. This could also be a place where you can toy around with. For example, if you're going to be using the Flame Art Ash of War, the Flame Strike, you can place the Fire Scorpion Charm right there. If not, the Turtle Talisman, Dragon Crest, this overall your utility talisman slot. Now for the Ashes of War, like I said, you can use whatever that you would want to use, because any Ash of War in this roster is going to allow you to use the heavy affinity, which is like what you have to do. The weapon has native scaling, native B scaling on strength, so it benefits from you using that heavy affinity on the weapon. Lion's Claw, it's an amazing Ash of War that deals tremendous amounts of posture damage. The Crack Blade, this is not a colossal sword, so the poise damage is not as amazing, but it's still a very usable Ash of War that allows you to, if you pair it up with a Crystal Tear, allows you to be breaking enemy stances quite a lot, and it doesn't cost that much of FP. One of my favorites as well is the Flaming Strike, which for some reason I think that this actually scales based on AR, or scales well with strength or dexterity, because the damage that you deal with this thing, just because of, without having like any kind of holy affinity or fire affinity or fate scaling, this actually increases quite a bit of damage, and you'll see throughout the rendition of the gameplay that you reach tremendous amounts of damage. And the FP consumption on this thing, it's really not that bad, and it's also, it can be slotted with a heavy weapon, so that's another option that you can have right here. 2 spells. Flame, grant me strength to increase our physical damage by 20% and fire damage by 20%. If you're not using Fire Affinity, you're not using Flaming Strike, you can be using Fire Creases to increase that portion of the damage by 20%. And if you're using Flaming Strike, this is going to be flat damage to right there, to flat 20% more damage to the Flaming Strike, but also gives you a boost. It gives you a bonus to a buff to your weapon, a buff weapon similar to what if you would be using a Fire Crease. That's not going to be increased that much, but the Flaming Strike actually is. And the base damage of the weapon, it's actually 750, which is amazing. If you can increase that by 20%, it's just beautiful. And then we have Golden Bow that increases your physical damage by 15%. Thanks to the Crystal Tears, this is why we can use Golden Bow, because we're going to be using the Faith, not Crystal Tear. That's why I wanted for you to have 15 points into Faith. 15 for native Flame Grant Me Strength, and then here you can use this to use Golden Bow. And then we have the Stone Barb Crack Tier. Some of the Ashes of War that we have right here deal tremendous amounts of posture damage, so you are going to be breaking enemy stances quite substantially, quite a lot of times. However, if you want to be using different little things, for example, like I said, if you're using Flaming Strike and you're using the Magic Scorpion Charm and you're using Flame Grant Me Strength, this is a very powerful combination to have right here, because the fire damage portion is going to be increased by tremendous amounts. However, remember that this is versatile and that this is interchangeable depending on the Ash of War that you're using on the weapon. The beautiful thing about basic standard weapons is that they always allow you the versatility to play and toy around with the elements depending on the situation. If you're fighting something that it's weak to fire, use a Fire Ash of War. If you're fighting against something that is very weak to physical damage, then use a physical Ash of War. You do have a very strong weapon right here. It's not that heavy, it deals decent damage. When it comes to aesthetics, the weapon is just beautiful. It's just beautiful to be running around there with this sword right here. I'd say that it's very similar to Radan Greatswords and the actual Consort Radan kind of style. They are very similarly looking. However, unfortunately, since the Consort Radan weapons are so trash, then you might as well be using this one right here, which it looks nice. It makes you look like a fierce red mane warrior, but at the same time you have something that is very powerful and that is very versatile. Anyways, if you like content like never super appreciated, and also there you go, you're a beautiful person, you're in there, go, you're a beautiful person, subscribe to the channel, join the Discord, have a beautiful day, and goodbye.